because I didn't get the email with the link, so I went on through the website and I looked in my spam and everything, Donna, but I didn't get it, and I'm wondering if other people didn't get it, and they're trying to figure out how to get on.
I got it.
I got it. I didn't get it.
Okay.
You get it?
As long as
Nobody got it?
Nobody got it?
as long as other people got it.
I used the one that you sent to get on.
I didn't look to see whether I got the agenda as a standalone agenda, as you said you would send today, Donna. But I went and logged in through the stuff you sent last night
That's what I.
in the agenda.
We're on. We're on.
Okay. I agree. So so myself and Mark and Wes and Adam and Daryl make a quorum of members. I know that Ann is not going to join us. I didn't hear. I thought that Alice was going to join us, and I thought that Karen was going to join us. Oh, there's Alice.
Oh, there's Alice. Yeah, Alice is on.
Hi, Alice. Okay, so I am going to call the meeting then to order at 7:01, and I am going to read now as I try to do at each meeting the rules for our Zoom meetings. Okay, this is a web-based call, so we're operating under the following procedures. This session is being audio recorded, just like every other Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Please be advised that today we are also recording the video of the proceedings. To ensure sound quality, the default rule for this meeting is that everyone will remain on mute. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally be keeping video on themselves throughout the meeting. When we go into a public hearing, when members of the public are speaking or making comments, we would ask that they show themselves on video so we can see them speaking, if at all possible. I understand that some people are calling in via telephone. During the public hearings, all of the normal rules, including stating and now spelling your name, still apply. So with that said, I will, we've talked about the roll call, and the next item on the agenda, 3A, are the regular meeting minutes of August 13, 2020. And I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, from August 13th, 2020.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I saw Wes's lips move, but Mark jumped in with audio first, so I'm going to take Mark as the second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, so signify by saying aye or raising your hand, or both. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And then public communication, oral. Is there anybody in any members of the public who are here who do not have a spot on the agenda and wish to have something to say? Okay, great. So then we're going to move right on to old business, and we're talking about agenda item 5A1, modification to application number 45-17SP, Birch Hill Recovery Center, LLC for Kent Realty LLC, 46 Maple Street, operation of a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center, map 4, block 12, lot 6. Modification to include an amendments to condition number 16 of the resolution of approval adopted by the Kent Planning and Zoning Commission, October 30, 2017. In quote, that a minimum of 2 emergency medical technicians who will also be members of the Kent Volunteer Fire Department shall be on site 24/7, 365 days per year. These 2 emergency medical technicians shall be separate and apart from patient services officers, end quote. I will start out by making a couple of comments from our meeting last week.
You need to, I don't know if you need to reopen the public hearing for that.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, so I will not read the notice of the public hearing because we had read that at our last meeting, but I will reopen the public hearing at 7:06 p.m. Okay, so my preliminary comments are, I read through the minutes of last month's meeting, and I want to be clear that it was never the intent of the commission. It was never the commission's intent that this condition number 16 limit employment opportunities for people at Birch Hill Recovery Center, nor to coerce volunteerism from any of those employees. In fact, it was the applicant who offered this during the first application process, and this offer factored into the commission's approval at that time. There was some discussion during our last meeting that, as I read through the minutes, it seemed to indicate that the commission, that this condition originated with the commission. I just wanted to be clear that it originated with the applicant. I know that we were looking for a couple of different things to talk about at this meeting, but before we get there, I would turn to the applicant. And Mr. Raskus, would you like to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ari Raskus with Birch Hill Recovery Center. Appreciate everyone's time again this evening after our last meeting, or I guess our last 2 meetings, one being informal, one being the formal public hearing. And we appreciate you hearing us out again on this matter. So one thing that we heard in the last meeting was some suggestions from the commission that it would make sense to once again sit down with members of the Kent Volunteer Fire and Ambulance Company and talk through this this issue, and also just talk generally about our business model and the type of staffing mix we have. And so we took that to heart, and we all immediately after the last meeting decided to put a date down on the calendar. It was a virtual meeting, but it was still everyone was present via video like this evening. There were 3 members from the Kent Volunteer Fire and Ambulance side and 2 members from our side. I think that the takeaway is that the bottom line was we want to be constructive in us presenting who we are, and once again and the type of people we have on our staff. This evening I have Brad Greenstein, our Chief Operating Officer, once again here with us. He joined me at that meeting. We talked about the level of staffing. We talked about the focus going forward to be meeting on a fairly regular basis as we move towards staffing up as well as opening the facility. And it was about a 45-minute meeting. We felt it was very constructive. And then I know Marianne Van Valkenburger is here this evening. She was present at that meeting, as well as Eric Epstein and one other member. Marianne and I spoke again, a week or 2 later, because she had another internal meeting, which she might talk about this evening. And we talked about the fact that we're just going to continue to see about how best we can collaborate and, just make sure that, similar to the suggestions that we've proposed to this point in time as it relates to, wording around making sure we have the proper mix of people who are of EMT and or greater qualification, in addition to having an outsourced, sign up an outsourced ambulance company, of which we've contacted 2 at this point in time. to talk about proposals, this was just continue to be consistent with what we feel is going to be helpful in making sure that we're not calling up about someone who stubs their toe or gets a bee bite necessarily, but really we're working hand in hand in trying to move things forward and collaborate. So with that being said, our preference is if there's a way, and respectfully we'd ask this evening to once again take into consideration some of the proposed concepts around the drafting of our proposed drafting, that we could make headway tonight and come to a resolution. And obviously we're here and ready to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay, thank you. Is there, I think I'll open this up to members of the public, maybe give preference in the beginning of the conversation to members of the volunteer fire department to see if they have any further comments from last month. Hi, Marianne.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Mary Ann Van Valkenburg, I'm the ambulance chief for Kent Volunteer Fire Department. We did have a meeting with Ari and Brad. Eric Epstein was there, as well as Art Romano, who is a veteran member of our department and has been in EMS for a long time. He's career. The meeting, I do believe, was good, and Ari and Brad explained, again, as they did at the last planning and zoning meeting, their makeup of staff and how they would be trained and stuff. There was talk about working with us and making sure that their staff is aware of when it's proper to call 911. But I really need to stress that the department still does have a concern. We don't know, how the calls, and I'm guessing that there will certainly be some, how that will affect us. We answer 911 calls. That's what we're here for, and we will continue to do that. But as calls, the call volume increases, it certainly can put a burden on us. Having their people, somewhat trained, aware of what is an emergency is great. But they can't help us in that transport. So that is still a concern. And like I said, I think our meeting was certainly, a good one. And, this is kind of where we are, because we don't know what the volume of calls will be, going forward when they do open.
I'd like to ask you a question, Marianne. And if I remember right, and I don't think that you were, I believe that you were not the ambulance chief the last time we looked through this, correct?
Right.
But I seem to remember, and I looked through the past, the minutes of the meetings where we discussed this the first time around, and there was some talk about the fact that some of the residents, the proposed residents, potential residents, could have IVs that would need to be removed prior to transport, and that would require an EMT, an outside EMT, to remove that IV and then possibly replace another. Am I misremembering?
No, we at the EMT level, we are not allowed to do IVs. So we could not transport that patient unless we had a paramedic basically on board. So
Okay.
that is not a level of care that we can do at our basic EMT level.
And would you be, without a paramedic, can I understand that the volunteer fire department would not be able to, the ambulance group would not be able to transport a person with an IV?
Correct.
Okay. Ari, do you have any comments about that? I know that was somewhat off topic.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chairman, I'd actually ask Brad if he could comment on that, because I think that, not that we want to rehash, what our capabilities are again, but I think it is important that we talk a little bit about what we are capable of doing based on our staffing mix.
Yeah, hi, Brad Greenstein. With our level 4 triage beds, those 5 beds as set aside and specifically licensed by the state, we would be able to do IVs. These are mostly, just for context, IV fluids for detoxification purposes, mostly alcohol detoxification. But we would have staff 24 hours a day that were qualified to start an IV and, if necessary, remove an IV. Obviously I can't speak for Mary Ann's staff and what they can do, but our staff would be qualified to do that.
Okay, thank you. So I saw Eric Epstein on, and I wonder, Eric, if you have anything to say, would you say it now? Would you jump in if you feel the need?
Thanks, Matt. I don't. I thought the meeting was well, and I just echo what Mary Ann said about the concern about call volume.
Okay. When I was looking through the minutes, Eric, from our last meeting, we were talking about a report regarding, or a report that would show the emergency versus non-emergency calls at other facilities, and how that private ambulance service, for lack of a better, forgive me if I'm speaking in layman's terms, but how that works and whether you see that as a benefit.
Can I pull out my notes and I'll be right back with you?
Of course. So we'll table that for a moment, and I'll open it up to any other members of, I think, the public who would like to, who have concerns or comments. And if if you're on video, raise your hand and I'll call you out specifically.
I have a question.
Okay.
One of the other organizations in town does have an agreement with a third-party ambulance service. So this Birch Hill is proposing basically to do the same thing. And so I guess my question is that third-party program that is at the other facility working? And if it is, then wouldn't that be helpful when it comes time to any kind of call volume coming from Birch Hill? I guess it sounds to me like they're going to be pretty much even, and they would be working in the same way. And it seems to be working for one organization, and I guess I don't understand why it wouldn't work for Birch Hill. Anybody?
Donna, that's the data I'm going to provide here in a few minutes.
Okay.
I've got that pretty well worked out.
Okay.
Anybody from the commission? Does anybody from the commission have any questions for the applicant?
I have some comments just from some things that I believe I understand them correctly, and I just think everybody should know. And Mary Ann or Eric will have to correct this if I have it wrong. So one, in order for if there was a staff member at Birch Hill, in order for them to go in the ambulance, they would have to be a member of the fire department or one of the affiliate fire departments to the Kent Volunteer Fire Department. They also, regardless of whether they're an RN or the various different qualifications that they have, if I understand correctly, they would also have to be an EMT. Which is a slightly different and maybe even not as advanced of a certification, but they would need to be an EMT. And that may be a barrier or an undue hardship for Birch Hill, but that's something I just thought the commission should know those two things. I don't think we knew them before. I think Mary Ann has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Ann.
Am I unmuted? I think I am. Yeah, that's correct, Adam. Is in order for somebody at Birch Hill to be able to transport a patient, in our ambulance, they would have to be a member of the department, and they'd have to be certified and licensed by the state of Connecticut as an EMT. So just having in the RN or an LPN, we can't have them, transport in our ambulance. So they would be a member. We do have, when you talked about, associate departments, we do have what we call associate members. So they might be, we have a few people from Warren who, belong to the Warren Fire Department and or ambulance, and, they are associate members. So they ride with us. They, their training may come from our department, but it also can come from their own department. So if they get all their yearly training, they keep us, up to date on that, or many of them do it with us as well. And we have other, there's other mutual aid departments that, that do the same thing. You might work in this, you might be somebody from Warren that works in Kent, and they are able to, transport. So they become a member and help us out. And we have firefighters, the same status, so.
But the change that Ari and Birch Hill is suggesting is not saying that they are going to prevent employees from voluntarily going through the EMT program and becoming a volunteer with the Kent Volunteer Fire Department. It just making it so that if someone is interested, they would have no objection if those people would volunteer on their own. It's not that they're not going to let them do it. It's to me, it just seems like it's the semantic of the wording. And Ari said it at the last meeting, that he would open up the doors to let the volunteer fire department come in and speak to employees and see if they could actually recruit someone who would be willing to actually go through the process. So the change that is being made, I think, just kind of clears up what was the intention of the commission at the very beginning when the approval was given. If I'm misunderstanding, then I apologize, but that's my interpretation of the change. Ari, is that right or not right, or?
No, that's 100% correct. We have no intent of stopping anyone from having an interest or being interested in being a volunteer of the local ambulance company. What we can't do is we can't have one of our employees on the insurance of the local ambulance company, like as an employee of theirs and also an employee of ours. That's where it becomes complicated. But I think what I heard a little bit more in our last meeting with Marianne and Eric is that there is maybe just a high level concern from them in terms of, general staffing in general, nothing to do with Birch Hill or not, right? And I think somewhat of the uniqueness of what we're saying here is, especially when we talk about the fact that we're open to them supplying marketing materials, some flyers and things of that sort in employee break rooms and/or, let's say having a lunch presentation, periodically, for some of our employees, is that if we aren't here, right, then that actually doesn't become an opportunity for them to speak to more people who could eventually become volunteers in the future. So in some ways, it's actually, I think it's more productive if we are around, because we're saying here, the doors are open in a collaborative way for people to learn more about your organization, and they can take that flyer and make that call and go. We just can't tell them they have to.
Right. Okay.
So I'll jump in. Okay, I'm sorry, Daryl, you go ahead. I've spoken enough.
I was just going to say, I remember being a little bit uncomfortable with this condition because we felt that to a certain degree, it gave de facto approval to the fire department rather than us. If an employee who was a member of the fire department quit or was fired or was injured, does that make their compliance with the permit null and void if they have to maintain that as a requirement? I mean, we've always been leery of approving things contingent on another organization's, following along with a condition, whereas, we generally want to make it within our control. We don't necessarily have ongoing control, consistent control, if we make part of the compliance employment and membership. What happens if someone does quit and they don't have 2 members at all times? Do they have a grace period to fulfill that requirement? I don't think we really built any language into it to deal with a temporary vacancy. So, it sounded too good to be true when we made it a condition, and perhaps it is.
Yeah, I agree with that, Daryl. I also agree with what Ari has said, that I think that we as a commission approved the use because we thought that it was a benefit to the town. It added value to the town. I remember the conversation as being more that we weren't quite, and this is sort of getting back to what Marianne had said earlier, that we weren't quite sure what the impact to the emergency services would be with the advent or with the inclusion of this facility in town. And to alleviate some of that concern or alleviate some of that impact, where the second ambulance might be dispatched and the volunteer ambulance corps could only field a 3rd responder, which would make it easier for them to respond to the emergency, because somebody from Birch Hill, an employee of Birch Hill, there would be a ready-made 2nd person for the ambulance. So I think from where I sit, my recollection is that it was more trying to satisfy the needs of the emergency services and not sort of demand that Birch Hill had a certain mix of employees.
I think Jean wanted to speak.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I have had my hand up for a long time, so it may not be relevant, but just for clarification, an RN licensure and EMT licensure are two different professions. So it's not as though one, an RN certainly has more training than an EMT, but it's not cumulative. So because they're an RN, they can revert back and just function as an EMT. They would need a separate certification from DPH for that. And so in my previous hat, there are models in the state where this is happening now, where there are staff members at skilled facilities. The one that I'm thinking of is a skilled nursing facility, where they are have an agreement with the local EMS to provide assistance in the form of an EMT or an EMR, and if they're available to transport on the call, they transport on the call. And the purpose of that is, I think this what the P&Z was looking for, which is to provide that additional help and assistance to the fire department in these potential pops in call volume, so that you have someone who's trained providing care as soon as possible. You're not going to get a better response rate than when it's in the same facility. And in the case that, I know the contingency that is in place is to have them transport, but having sort of scaling this back to something that's more of, we're going to make sure that our employees know that there's a volunteer fire department that has EMRs and EMTs, and that's sort of it. I think is going too far back. You have people who are in the medical field. They're going to be working in the facility. It's, to take an EMR class even is not a heavy lift, and to have these folks available for some response immediate, I think is needed in the town.
Hey, Jean, I apologize for not seeing that you had your hand raised. I wonder how you're doing that. I don't see your video up. So is there some way? I just, were you asking via Zoom, or were you jumping up and down in your video?
I was asking via Zoom. I did it via the raise hand feature in the participant window in your nav there, with where all the participants are.
Okay, fine. And my second question for you is, Jean, just as a point of order, you appeared in the meeting minutes from our last meeting as first selectman, and I just want to be clear that you are speaking in which capacity, as you mentioned, there's a lot of hats, but in which capacity are you commenting now?
Yes, yeah, as first selectman.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other commission members have anything to ask or any comments to make?
Matt, I would like to say something.
Okay, hey Karen. Oh, and I'll take this opportunity to note that Karen has been, Karen joined us right at the very beginning of the public hearing, so she has been participating, or at least listening in for the entirety of the discussion.
I think we need to rewind the film a little bit and remember that one of the real concerns of approving this application had to do with the limited abilities for our EMT services to handle everything in town. And I don't see how that has been improved in any way. Not that they have increased our stress, but our volunteers are few and far between. We have another facility in town, and I think that we're going backwards instead of forwards here. This was always a condition of their approval, and I feel that they should honor that. And I've read and looked over the medical staffing that was provided to us, and quite frankly, I'm not that impressed. I see a lot of holes in it, and I think this puts burden on our town, and in particular, the EMT services. I would like to hear from them what they're, meaning the EMTs, the emergency services, what their recommendation is. And I think we should follow it as the commission. I also think that if this company, Birch Hill, can't in some way contribute to get this resolved by adding staff members or to their facility to help out in these situations, that is unfair at this point. So, you know, out of the health and welfare condition of our allowing them to receive permission to open the facility, I think they need to keep to their pledge. And I don't know how it got so complicated legally. We have an awful lot of attorneys involved, and it seems to me that they should be able to come up with a solution.
Does anybody from Birch Hill want to react to that?
I think we spent last meeting talking specifically about why we can't do what's in the existing condition. We've tried as best we can to present some supportive language which focuses on the staffing level mix, and as well as our contracting with a private ambulance company to try to alleviate any additional concern. We don't really mean for any of this to be antagonistic. We have a lot of conditions we need to meet as part of this planning and zoning permit that's been issued to us 3 years ago. This is one of them. And there are others there as well. There's a fence we need to install. There's certain security officers we have to have there. We're dealing with the cards that have been dealt with us, and we're trying to move the process forward and really be as collaborative as possible with the local volunteer ambulance company and fire company, as you heard from the members of that company this evening. And I'm not really sure, how else to respond to that. Brad, I don't know, if in terms of your personal experience, Brad, working in an organization based on the license that we've received here, knowing other inpatient treatment organizations across the country, how would you view our staffing mix compared to many other inpatient 3.7 or 3.3? I think we can talk about that again, and we're very happy to. But I don't think it's fair to suggest that our staffing mix is unimpressive. I don't.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. This is Brad Greenstein again. I'll just say two things. I think relative to like facilities, the staffing is quite aggressive with respect to the ratios that we're proposing for medical and nursing staff. And on top of that, greatly, I feel comfortable using that word, exceed the state minimums for particularly the nursing department. And I think that shows clearly to me Birch Hill's commitment to quality and safety. I think every company, every business like ours has a choice to sort of staff at the minimum required or to exceed that minimum. By exceeding it, I think is one way we demonstrate our desire to provide a better than average quality product and ensure safety for staff and for patients. Not just for patients. Having additional staff makes the staff feel safe. It makes the staff feel comfortable, and that's a very important consideration as an employer, and something that we take really seriously. So I would also argue that there are not many holes, but in our medical and nursing staffing, but absent a specific any specifics there, I probably won't comment further.
May I say something else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Fisher, could you give Karen just a minute to speak, and then we'll put you on deck.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yes, Karen.
Yes.
I think the difference here is that we're a small town, and we have a very small group of volunteers for emergency purposes. Maybe some of the other facilities that are used as comparison for medical staffing are in larger towns where the emergency services are paid and not just volunteer. I think the problem we have is that we're a volunteer town. And I think that's probably where the burden comes in, where the burden comes into play. And again, I would really like to hear specifically what the volunteer fire department and EMTs recommend or feel about this. I think it's gotten kind of wishy-washy.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
Got to unmute first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to respond briefly to Ms. Casey's points that she made. Her claim that we're, quote, going backwards instead of forwards is in my view, unsupported. The Birch Hill has made efforts to not only provide information, but to provide the reasons for the staffing, and it's more than adequate for the facility and the services it provides. And there's absolutely nothing to indicate that we're going backwards instead of forwards. And she also said, well, we've got holes in the staffing without any detail, without any evidence to show that. And, we're not trying to be adversarial. We've done the best we can to comply not only with the terms of the special permit, but to make sure that the facility has not only adequate staff, but to go out and hire an ambulance service to deal with the concerns over transportation of patients. This is not going backwards. This is definitely an effort to make things work, not only for Birch Hill, but for the town of Kent. I'm really not trying to be adversarial. I'm just trying to point out that what Birch Hill is doing is done in good faith in an effort to fully comply with what the commission expects and requires.
Matt, did I miss it?
Go ahead, Mark.
Were we going to get data from the ambulance service about the number of calls from the other facility?
Sure, Eric. Are you ready?
Yeah, I was actually going to email it to Donna so that she could screen share it if you want. Is that what you want me to do?
I have never screen shared anything, so I don't.
Oh,
I'm afraid
okay.
that if I do that, I'm going to get kicked out.
Okay. All right. Then I will walk through it.
Matt,
Yeah.
Donna, you should be able to just hit that green button at the bottom of your display.
Hold on, please. Wait, Eric. If you feel it's important to show it, you can share from your own screen.
Okay.
Did we lose Eric?
No, sorry. I'm just loading it up. Sorry.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Is it coming up?
We can see your screen, Eric. Yeah, it's
Okay.
you'll have to rotate it clockwise and then move it around. There you go. That's great.
Okay, so that's page one. Let me just load up page two if I can here. I'm sorry. All right, well, let me try to explain this here. So I think we talked about last month, calls are coded through emergency medical dispatch. And basically there's 5 codes, A through E. So if you look in the left-hand column, A through, well, most of them are A through D, and E would basically be a cardiac arrest. So an A call through emergency medical dispatch, the system that LCD uses, is basically a non-emergency call. So if you look at 2018, the alpha calls for High Watch were 18, and the alpha calls in 2018 for Mountainside were 61. So Mountainside, North Canyon has their ambulance service that has staffing there. So they do not hire any outside service, a transport ambulance service, like High Watch began doing on July 12th of 2018. They signed the contract with AMR. So prior to that, in 17 and 16, the alpha calls were 31 and 31 respectively. So they did go down in 2018 after July 12th when they signed the contract, but there were still 18 calls for that year that were classified as non-emergency. Now, that could be, you'd have to go through each call to actually determine if they were emergencies or not.
And these are calls, all of these calls were responded to by the volunteer ambulance department.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And Eric, what are the B and C and D calls?
So a Bravo call, a B call, is an emergency call for the Kent ambulance without a paramedic. A Charlie and a Delta call are both emergency calls are also emergency calls for the Kent ambulance, but they also include a paramedic, which is, our main paramedic is out of New Milford Hospital. Serves 7 towns, so they could be spread pretty thin if there's calls going on in one of those other 7 towns.
Is that paramedic who's dispatched out of New Milford a member or an associate member of all of the different departments that he or she serves?
No, Mary Ann, you okay with me speaking? I don't want to step on Mary Ann's toes, but the paramedic is a contract service with these 7 towns. So the town of Kent pays a contract portion for that paramedic service along with the other 7 towns. So they are a contracted service. They are not a member of the department.
Okay.
But in 2019, the number of calls dropped by 50%.
Well,
And
that's
was-
only through July.
Oh, I see.
This data is only through July.
I'm sorry, and the 2018 data is also, that's for the full year or only through July?
That is for the full year.
And the table on the right, this is very specifically for that particular facility non-emergent call data. So alpha calls and non-alpha calls, and that's broken down into 6-month periods because of the date that the contract was signed. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that gives you a pretty good screenshot as to the non-emergency calls.
So the period from January 1 to July 12, 18 is roughly equivalent to the alpha calls are roughly equivalent to that same period in 2019. I think I
Yeah.
understand. Mark, does that make sense to you? Does this information help?
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, is there anything that you would bring to our attention with this data, regarding this data?
I mean, this is the world according to Eric Epstein. I mean, the commercial ambulance, I feel certainly helped, but it didn't solve the problem. And if you were to look at the call data today, I mean, the last 6 months call volume's been way down due to, you know, for whatever reason. I mean, we can all assume it's because of the pandemic and the fact that people are afraid to go to the hospital, from what we've heard. But you know, I would think that in normal times, the call volume will go back up again, but you certainly have no guarantee of that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eric. So if you would
Sure.
stop sharing your screen, and then we'll go back to looking at each other's smiling faces and see what else we would like to talk about. So I think we've heard some testimony tonight that we hadn't heard before. We've heard some of the same stuff. I think we're nearing the point where we could close the public hearing, but I want to make sure that everybody has had a chance to say anything that they want to say or ask for any information that they would like to have. Before I leave that, Eric, would you please email that document that we just looked at to Donna so she's got it for the record?
I sure will.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to run through the commission first and give anybody the opportunity to say anything else that they want to say. So I'm going to start, so I'm going to go in order on my screen. Mark?
Yeah, I guess, my feeling is, we don't have this condition for the other facility that, certain number of their employees have to be members of the volunteer, ambulance service. So I just, in fairness, it seems to me, I don't see justification to impose it on Highlands.
Wes?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have been listening. It seems like it's highly technical and it doesn't sound like they're changing anything. They're just trying to get out from under the insurance aspect of this, that I don't think it was understood when we wrote the condition. I don't think anybody understood it. I mean, I think that they've made steps here. I don't think we're going forwards or backwards. I don't know that much has changed. I think they're making a good faith effort to resolve the situation. So I don't see any big problem with this.
Thanks, Wes. Daryl?
So basically, as I said, I think the intent of our conditions still, holds true and solid. It's just one of the mechanisms of enforcement that we put in there is not a proper mechanism. So I think if the requirement is lifted, but the intent still remains, it accomplishes what we wanted to put out there.
Thanks, Daryl. Alice?
Matt, I think my fellow commissioners have all made very constructive statements. I don't know what's fair or unfair here. It's somewhat of a subjective. I was very interested in the numbers that we just saw. And the only takeaway I got from it was I'm not totally sure I understand why these numbers and why our situation, the mountainside thing, is relevant. I thought the telling point was the third party or the outside ambulance service had not made a significant dent in the work of our volunteer fire department and ambulance service. That was kind of more telling to me, because even if Birch Hill had a third party, I mean, I don't know if third party, but private service like iWatch does, it still leaves our volunteers subject to a lot of work and a number that we don't know what that is. I mean, it just is it's a number we don't know, and the volunteer fire department can't tell us, and I can understand why they can't. So somehow I pull back from all of this and say it's our job to protect the health and welfare of our community. That's what our commission exists about. And how can we, this is very awkward because we don't have any hard data, and data is the only way to go. And when you say that we didn't do this to one applicant, we were doing it to another, I don't know whether who comes first wins, so I guess I'm not being very helpful, but because I don't know, it's just incredibly complicated. And the worst thing that can happen is that we as a commission aren't protecting the whole community, no matter what. And if an ambulance can't get to some other catastrophe because we've approved this, I don't know, I'm just taking up time, and I shouldn't, I just find it very, very distressing in a lot of ways that we want to be fair, but we mostly want to protect our citizens. And it's just a really hard situation. I think the effort of Birch Hill to try to say we'll have more people on our staff, it's great. And if they want to work with the rules and regs of being an EMT, more power to them. That's great. we're not requiring that of them. So anyway, I'll shut up and say, I don't think this is a very easy, easy situation to figure out what to do with. You didn't want to hear me say that, but.
All right. Thank you, Alice. Adam, you're up. If you have anything.
I think it's complicated. I think that we do have to be concerned about overtaxing our ambulance service because it affects the citizens of our town. At the same time, the problem that our ambulance service is having with volunteer staffing is a little more systemic. And I don't think that Birch Hill makes or breaks it. I think it's a problem that they've been talking about and warning about for some time, that they may need to do more of a permanent staffing. So I don't see. I think Birch Hill, if they could put these people there, they would, and they can't. They've. So I'm not sure which way to go.
Okay. Karen, anything else to ask or to comment on?
No, I think I've said how I feel about this, and it really goes back to the very basic principle of trying to do the best for our community and for the safety of all our citizens here. It is our mission, and I think that Birch Hill should try to provide more on their end with medical staffing and be a part of the Kent Volunteer Department. I think all these conversations and all these meetings that they're having are probably not accomplishing much. And I don't mean to be angry about it, but I feel a little bit angry because we made this a condition of their approval. Yes, they have others, but that's not our problem. Our problem is trying to figure out how we can provide the best care with very few volunteers. And some of their statistics are, I believe, probably reflective of larger communities that have more help, in terms of medical services, either paid or volunteers. And we're just not that town. And I again would stress that our decision should really come from what our volunteer service members are telling us. And it sounds to me like they're indicating that they need more help, that they can't manage this. So that's my concern.
Okay, thanks, Karen. So in the interest of moving the conversation along, but hopefully not at the risk of closing out the conversation, or so I'm not at risk of closing out the conversation. Is there anything else that the applicant wants to tell us at this point before we move to close the public hearing?
I think that what we'd like to do is very briefly just say that before this, this issue came up, which we came to you with in July, we originally came to the town 3 years ago with a thought in mind, and obviously a business plan and a business model. From the very beginning, we've been an organization that has been open book, collaborative, cooperative, non-litigious, and really just focused on presenting a strong case of a business that is run by professionals, and that's not changed. And so when we started to think long and hard about the fact that we really have concerns about this issue in the spring of this year. Before we ever came to the commission, we went and we sat down with Marianne and a couple other colleagues because we wanted to be very transparent from the very beginning. And, you know, while on the one hand, we understand there's concerns, small town, at the end of the day, we've done things in our opinion, and we will hopefully continue to do things in a manner that's collaborative and that speaks to the type of people we are. So when we leave here, and hopefully the commission thinks favorably on our proposed language and what we're trying to do here, we won't just kind of say goodbye and then, you know, open up the doors one day and then say, hey, it's your problem. That's never been our intent. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we thought about how can we be collaborative beyond just the change in the drafted language, but also open up our home to allow the local volunteer company to also speak to our employees and potentially solve maybe some of the systemic issue that Commissioner Manis, if I said that correctly, spoke to, because I definitely have heard some of those issues from the company and from, over the years and talking with people, in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'll stop there and I thank you again for your time.
Thank you. So I would look, I don't see Mr. Fisher or Mr. Greenstein raising your hand. So I'm going to look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And I would look for a second. That's Adam raising his hand. So we've got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion, I would call the vote, and those in favor of closing the public hearing, so signify by saying aye or raising your hand. And that is, motion passes, motion carries. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some hopefully short discussion amongst the commissioners. We went through and most everybody had something to say about their opinion, about their feelings about this. I continue to be on the fence. I understand the need for emergency services. I understand that there may be a void in the emergencies, the ability of the emergency services, and that's why I was, going back in my recollection several years ago when we first looked at this, I was pleased that there was a solution where the ambulance could roll with half of the staff necessary to transport a patient, and somebody from Birch Hill would be able to jump on that as a member of the company and transport. It would alleviate the pressure on the volunteer fire department, on the ambulance corps. I also believe that that's not necessarily a problem of Birch Hill. It's not necessarily their problem from a business standpoint, but that was something that we seriously considered as part of our initial approval. So I know that's the last word, and I didn't really mean to take the last word, but
Matt, this is kind of crazy, but other conditions that are included in the permit require them to spend money, build a fence, have security people on walk. Could we switch to a condition that requires them to fund the volunteer fire department hiring a full-time EMT?
I think we could, but we can't do it now, Mark. I think that the application on the table is to replace condition number 16 with some specific language, or to eliminate condition number 16. If we denied the application, then the applicant could come back to us and we could open up that discussion again. I think that's procedurally, that's correct. So I think that the question on the table is the modification to include an amendment to condition number 16 of the resolution of approval adopted by us, which talks about a minimum of 2 emergency medical technicians. I think that's the question on the table.
Right, and then the substitution of language that was submitted by Ari. And I don't know whether or not you guys still have that, but I can read it if you would like to hear what it has to say, so that you know what you're voting on.
And that was transmitted to us for the 8/13 meeting, and it was previously item number 6A1.
Right.
And it came from an email, right?
Yeah, and it's an email that was dated August 10th.
Yes.
So if you see the last paragraph in that email is the suggested language that they had presented.
So Donna, are we voting on these two things separately? That first we're going to vote on an amendment, and second approve this language, or are we going to do it all in one motion?
I think you can do it in one motion, so that it would read that, basically the existing number 16 would be changed from its existing wording to wording substituted as, and then read, if you want to go word for word with what Ari had suggested, then you would just read that sentence.
So then why don't you read that sentence, Donna, and then we can discuss that as a possible replacement for condition number 16.
Okay. So the wording that was suggested by Ari in an email submitted on August 10th is, in accordance with representations by the applicant, Birch Hill will be required to have staff on site 24/7, 365 that are qualified to provide medical services at the same or greater level than that of EMTs, and that the applicant will contract with a private ambulance service for non-911 calls.
Thank you. So is there any discussion regarding the replacement of this language, for the substitution of this language for the current condition number 16 language?
Matt, this is Alice.
Hi, Alice.
That question, so this is really kind of critical here, procedurally and otherwise. If we are voting right now to replace words that were written for an applicant before and we approved it, right? So now we're just amending our approval. Is that?
That's correct.
And are we required to make that decision right now?
At the commission's pleasure. If the commission feels like we want to have more discussion about this and that we're not going to have time to do it tonight, I believe now that the public hearing is closed, we have at least another meeting that we could table this discussion until. I would prefer to discuss that now and not revisit it in October. But it's at the commission's pleasure, Alice.
Well, I know we're all tired of talking about it, but and we want to get this over with for everybody's health and welfare. But some things have come up tonight that have bothered me in ways that I had not addressed before. And I don't know, am I talking in a public hearing venue right now, or am I talking to my fellow commissioners?
The latter. We've closed the public hearing. So it's this is really a commission discussion now.
Okay.
Adam, you had something to say?
I was just reminding Alice that we can't get any more outside information right now. Now that the public hearing is closed, this is entirely a discussion for the commission and a decision for us to make, whether we do it tonight or we do it a different night. There's nothing else that we can get from outside. And just because I'm on, I am conflicted because I don't want to overtax our ambulance service. We don't know how many calls Birch Hill will generate. They have a pretty serious staff, and maybe it won't overtax our ambulance service. The problem is we just don't know. I don't know if it's right for us to require a business to have some of their employees join a volunteer fire department in order for them to do business in our town. I don't know that that's an acceptable requirement. But we really do, I think, have to consider what happens with our ambulance service if they're going to so many calls that either they have to change the way they work and they have to have permanent staffing, which is something they've looked at. And in the meantime, does that mean that when our ambulance service is on calls to other, to transport people to this business, to another business, that they're not here to transport somebody who lives here who's in trouble?
I think one of the things that you've got to also remember is that this is unknown at this point in time, but there's nothing to say that if you approve this change, that it can't be addressed at a later date once the business is up and running at 100%. I think the goal at this point in time is to get the business in there and up and running, and then it's something that can be looked at again, just like we're looking at it now, from something that had been approved back 3 years ago.
But Donna, doesn't that have to come from the applicant? It's that the change in the conditions, a change in the conditions couldn't come from the commission.
No, I think a change in the condition can come from either party, and I think it's obvious from the past two meetings that Birch Hill is willing to sit down and negotiate and talk about things. I mean, what they're presenting to us tonight, even as far as the staffing level is concerned, is based on what they consider to be best practices, but that could change as the business evolves. So the way that I look at it is it's an ever growing, at this point in time, situation that's very fluid. And so tweaking number 16 to read this where it still provides some kind of coverage might need to be tweaked once again. But at that point in time, the ambulance service might be back up to a point where they have been able to bring in new volunteers. They've beefed up their recruiting, or they might have gone to a paid service. So I think that while it is a special permit and is a condition of a special permit, it's something that can be modified. And I think they've shown that they are willing to negotiate and to discuss at any point in time.
So can we make that? Can we add that provision in this condition that says that that after a certain period of time that the commission and the applicant can review the impact that they've had on the emergency services, and that doesn't seem to me to be right, that we can add that in. It seems to be somewhat it's not arbitrary, but that would make me comfortable, but I just don't know that we're allowed to do it.
Well, I mean, we did that with High Watch. You know, we told High Watch that once they were up and running, it was going to be their responsibility in the future to do a traffic study to make sure that we know what's going on with the number of cars that are going in there. So we did condition that approval for something in the future. I don't see any reason why we can't do that. If you are questioning that, I mean, I'm sure it's something that we could run past Mike. But the thing is, then you would have to, now you are waiting until October.
Well, for me, I'm relatively certain that my vote is going to be to deny this application.
The modification to the application.
The modification to the application.
To the special permit.
But if I had some, if there was some condition where we could revisit this after a certain period of time to find out, so we knew, because like everybody's been saying, there's really no way to know what the impact to the emergency services is going to be.
Right.
So once we knew what the impact was, then we could review it again and say, oh yeah, everything is great. You know, the paid service and them opening up Birch Hill opening up their doors and allowing the volunteer fire department to come and recruit. You know, maybe it's all going to work out, and then we can rest easy.
Right.
Can I ask, if it turns out that they have more calls than are expected, and it is a burden on our ambulance service, and we put these words in there, and we want to revisit it. Now, we've already accepted them. They have an up and running business. We can't shut them down. We can't really do anything. We can ask them to work with us, but at the same time, I think Birch Hill's hands are somewhat tied. They can't make their employees become volunteer firemen and go through EMT school or whatever it is, training, and have the ongoing EMT education that they have to go through every single year. They can't do that. So what happens when that, I like the idea. It would make it really, really easy right here. I don't see how that's even possible.
Well, because I think at that point in time, then maybe, as it's been suggested by the Kent Volunteer Fire Department, this would be the impetus for them to go to a paid service, which is what they're anticipating having to do in the future anyway. I'm being blunt, you know, I mean, but.
I think you're right. And if they did go to the paid service, then they wouldn't want Birch Hill and High Watch and any other business to have a outside service anymore. They would want all that to be contracted directly with them.
Yeah, and I mean, and let's look at the logistics of it. Both of them are probably going to be coming online, if not maybe in its entirety for Birch Hill, about the same time.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Adam that you know, if we put this sort of fail-safe language in there, and let's say it's not working, and Birch Hill has made, you know, they're up and running and they've made a certain capital expenditure, and based on the approval of this commission, and then we come back and we say, no, sorry, you can't operate anymore. I think that that's, not only unfair, but it would, I think they would be within their rights to beat us over the head, I think, with a bat.
Well, I think they would definitely have the right if we come forward and say, look, we heard from the volunteer fire department, they're having a hard time. We'd like to sit down and negotiate. It's definitely, they have the option of saying, look, you know what? We did what we needed to do, and you're going to have to, the town is now going to have to make a decision.
And is it our job to put the town in that position?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, me neither. So let me.
I think that's what the question is. That is that is the question, because I don't think anybody has an issue with Birch Hill and their business. Our only concern is our ambulance service and the citizens of our town, and making sure that everybody continues to be safe. And to vote for the change, I kind of need to know that we're doing the right thing by our town, and that that continues to be safe, and that we have an ambulance service that can respond to everybody in our town.
Daryl?
I was going to say that, even in the face of dwindling volunteerism, which has probably been a decades-old problem, this commission still approved 2 new treatment centers and a huge expansion of a 3rd. It seems absurd to now be talking about overtaxing our emergency services based on one condition. I mean, the time to worry about this is past. It seems like immense buyer's remorse to suddenly want to turn back the tide based on this condition, which is not going to have a huge effect. I think Adam even said it one way or another. So I don't know. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Daryl. So is there a commission member who is willing to make a motion to approve the modification, which would change condition number 16 to this proposed language that Donna read a few minutes ago?
Can Donna read that one more time, please?
Matt, can I ask something too?
Yeah, Donna, why don't you read it, and then we'll let Karen ask.
Okay, so this is what was recommended or suggested, presented. In accordance with representations by the applicant, Birch Hill will be required to have staff on site 24/7, 365 that are qualified to provide medical services at the same or greater level than that of EMTs, and that the applicant will contract with a private ambulance service for non-911 calls.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Karen?
Well, I was just going to ask what our hurry is, because if this is a facility that's not opening until, I'm not sure I have the date right, but my understanding is the spring. Maybe we should be prudent and take another month and look at the 2 clauses and have a bit more discussion as a commission with our attorney. I don't know. I'm not feeling really comfortable approving it. And I don't know what our rush is. And I really do think that it would be somewhat dicey to go forward and then say, oops, we need to now review, there's a problem. It doesn't feel good to me.
Okay, thanks, Karen. I'll respond just briefly to that. I don't feel like we're rushing into anything. I think we've had a couple 3 months of a month of preliminary conversations, and this is the second of real deliberations. But that being said, if the commission wants to discuss this again in October, then then that's what we'll do. I'll respond a little bit, I think, to Daryl, and I don't feel like I have buyer's remorse. I think that my position continues to be that Birch Hill is they will be a good member of the community, a good addition to the community. And I'll respond to Adam a little bit and say that, once Birch Hill is here, and I think they are here because of our previous approval, they become members of the town. So I don't think it's fair to say, that residents at Birch Hill will be taking the place of some other resident in town. I mean, I don't want to be provincial about it. And they become part of our community, and they're, part of it. I'll just reiterate what I had said before. That it's simply this one condition which we considered valid and valuable enough the first time we looked at it to alleviate some of the pressure on the local emergency services. So I'll go back to the question that I had before. Is there any commission member who's willing to make the motion? Daryl?
I'll make that motion with the language as presented by Donna.
Adam, that's a second? Okay, so the motion by Daryl and a second by Adam. Is there any further discussion, before I call the vote? So I see everybody but Karen on the screen. So Karen, I'll just rely on you to jump in and say something if you want. Okay, then I'm going to call the vote. There are seven. The 7 members of the commission are members. So we've got 7 voting members. It's a quorum of voting members. It's more than a quorum. It's a full panel of voting members. So I will call the vote. And Karen, you'll have to verbally say your vote when we're ready. So all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. Okay, that's Mark and Adam and Daryl and Wes. And all those opposed, so signify by raising your hand or saying nay.
Nay. Nay.
Karen and
Can you hear?
And yes, I can hear you, Karen. Thank you. Karen and Alice and I as nays. The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank
So
you.
there you have it.
We do appreciate all the time and attention you've expended in considering this one.
You're welcome, Mr. Fisher, and we appreciate the time that you and Ari and Brad have spent with us as well. So we thank you as well.
All right. We look forward to having Birch Hill be a part of the KED community.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
So what will happen now is I will draft a letter on Monday that will show what the new language is and the revision to the original special permit. It'll have to be filed on the land records because it is a change to the special permit. And then it'll be in the newspaper, and then you have 15 days in case anybody wants to appeal that. But other than that, that would be the way that you would be operating.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, I'm gonna, we made it through the first item on the agenda. I'm gonna move on to 5B1, which is the planning for the rewrite of the subdivision regulations. And I believe that we have previously agreed that we will leave this on the agenda, but we will not act on it until at such time as we can all get together and sort of look at each other face to face.
Right.
Is that still the case?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Then agenda item 5B2, which is the application number 48-20C, Stephen Kalur for Kiara Burnham.
Kiara.
Yara, thank you. 37 Flat Rock Road, map 11, block 40, lot 9, construction of a 20 by 26 detached garage and associated site work retaining wall in Horizon Line Conservation District. So I will, again, open up the conversation by saying the last time we talked about this, we were not quite sure whether we'd be able to see this from at least the roads in the vicinity. And Adam, can I put you on the spot? Did you look to see whether you thought that it was going to be visible?
I did. I can't, I don't think it'll be visible from anywhere. Going up Gear, when you get all the way up to the top of Gear Mountain where it becomes flat rock, you actually can't see it at all. The bend in the road prohibits it from down at Howland. When I look up, I can see where the property is, but I can't, there'd be no way that I could see this building. And coming across flat rock in front of it, of course, you can't, it's steep going up there and you're right at the base of it and you can't see up there. You can't see it at all going down Treasure Hill. And you can't see it at all when you're going up Ore Hill. I mean, of course, it's summer and there's leaf, but I just tried to see where can I see this from? And I really can't see it from anywhere. And even when I look at a map, I don't see where I can see the property from anywhere unless I drive up the driveway.
All right, thanks, Adam. Daryl, do you have anything to add with your knowledge of the area?
No, just the general consideration under which the Horizon Line zone was formulated is, it's not truly a no-see zone. It's just, giving the commission the ability to judge the impact. So even with leaf cover on, it would seem to be a good indication if Adam could not discern where it is. Even when the leaves are down, if it were visible, the impact would still be relatively minor. So, that minor impacts are not necessarily what the sieve of the net was meant to catch.
All right, thank you, Daryl. Is there any more? So I'll say that as we talked about last month, with these applications, especially in the sensitive Horizon Line district, I would really like to see more information than less. And I know Donna included that in the minutes from the last meeting, and we will hope and expect more information regarding the larger site location in future applications. But based on the commissioners who, Adam, who's been up there, and Daryl, who's the Horizon Line is near and dear to his heart, that I don't have any other comments than that. So are there any comments from the balance of the commissioners or concerns or questions?
I'll just, in regards to your comment about more information, is it something that we should talk about, not now, but as a commission, maybe we need to make a requirement when applications are in the Horizon Line district that they provide certain types of information so we can see that, and not put Donna in the place of asking somebody for it when it's not written and expressly required.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of the information that I would be looking for is written and expressly required. So then I think the next order of business is to accept the request for waiver to the requirements in the site plan. And that was submitted as agenda item 6B3 at our August meeting, and where they're requesting waivers from the utility, from submitting a utility plan, a landscaping plan, construction notes and details, zoning information table, off-site information, which includes buildings and parking areas and curb cuts and adjoining properties. Also a waiver from an impact analysis, the location of stone walls and archaeological resources, scenic views and other attributes, and a traffic study. And I think that's all. So I would look for a motion for those waivers.
I'll make that motion for the waivers. Everything that you just said.
And as listed in the site plan application checklist, which was included in our packet last month for the August 13th meeting.
So I'm happy to those numbers out. It's okay.
Okay. That's a second. I think that's good. So all those in favor to the waivers, so signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those opposed, motion carries. Okay, so then the next order of business is to call a vote on the application itself.
Well, we have to make a motion for it, so I'll make a motion that we accept, where is it? Application number 48-20C, Stephen Kalur for Kira Burnham, 37 Flat Rock Road, map 11, block 40, lot 9, construction of a 20 by 26 detached garage and associated site work, retaining wall in the Horizon Line Conservation District.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote then. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to move on to new business. And this is the application number, this is agenda item 6A1, application number 51-20SP and 52-20C, Vincent Roberti Jr. for High Watch Recovery Center Incorporated, 47 Carter Road, map 14, block 21, lot 17, construction of a 30-foot by 70-foot greenhouse.
So Matt, I need to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Wes.
As will I.
Thank you, Daryl. So this is my watch. So that leaves 5 of us for voting and discussion. I will read the notice of public hearing. And the Town of Kent Planning and Zoning Commission notice of public hearing. The Town of Kent Planning and Zoning Commission shall hold a public hearing via Zoom meeting on Thursday, September 10, 2020, during a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. to discuss and possibly act on application number 51-20SP and 52-20C, Vincent Roberti, Vincent Roberti Jr. for High Watch Recovery Center Incorporated, 47 Carter Road, map 14, block 21, lot 17, construction of 30 by 70 greenhouse. Any corresponding documentations will be attached to the official agenda. At this meeting, persons may participate and be heard. The Zoom meeting number can be located on the official agenda that will be filed on the Town of Kent's website a minimum of 24 hours prior to the official Zoom meeting. Matt Winter, Chairman. Now, before I go further, I thought that there was a discrepancy in the size of the greenhouse, but there is not. Okay, so that's the notice of public hearing. And with that, I will open the public hearing at 8:45 p.m. without objection. And I would hear from Donna first, if that's okay, with a report on what is being requested.
Okay, so as you saw in your packet, they are proposing to construct a greenhouse to grow vegetables that will be used and at the campus across the street. There were some things that were missing from the site plan that I sent to you in your packet. I did get a new site plan today, but because of the 24-hour rule, we're not going to be able to see that. So basically, what the only thing that I got on the site plan was a little box with an arrow to it that said proposed greenhouse. I figured out the distances myself, but I would still like to see that on the site plan, and I think that that's what Vinny had submitted to me today, which I have no distances to the wetlands. I don't have any distances to the setbacks. The size of the greenhouse, it was missing from the site plan. I don't have any indications about whether or not there was going to be water or electricity. I had heard that there was not, but I think Vinny can speak to that. And I mean, I don't have anything else to add to it besides that. That's about all that I know. Vinny is here to represent High Watch.
Great. Then I'll, thanks, Donna. Hi, Vin.
Good evening, commissioners. It's good to see everybody. So yeah, it's a greenhouse. I'm sure we've all seen them. It's not one of the glass type greenhouses. This is a plastic covered greenhouse, a hoop house, essentially 30 by 70, that will sit on a gravel pad, stone dust, pea gravel, some type of something that's comfortable to walk on, but there's no bituminous concrete. There's no formwork involved. The posts are actually driven into the ground, basically like a fence post, and all those hoops are held up just by about 36 inches. It's 36 inches into the ground. It's located about 168 feet off of the barn, the horse barn. There's a flat area there that's near our existing vegetable garden. We're fast outgrowing our vegetable garden, and we'd also like to be able to extend the season and start earlier, and also, do some things over the winter in regards to flowers and vegetables, and just get a head start like everyone else wants to for gardening and get stuff into the ground sooner. So this greenhouse will allow us to extend our growing season and kind of move things around the farm and put them into warm storage when they're needed to avoid frost and things of that nature. It will have water and power that will be supplied from the barn. The barn has a 200 amp service, so there'll be a electrical service that will be dug into the ground with a little sub panel there that will run the heater and just some lights. There's no habitable space in the greenhouse. There's no restrooms or bathrooms or anything. And it's a structure that can be moved fairly easily. If we, want to find a new location for it, we'd obviously come to you, but it's a fairly easy structure to move around the farm. It's not located I think I did by Google Earth, you can actually plot. It's 500 plus feet from the river. I know that the river has some stipulations. So it's what I plotted from Google Earth. That was at least 500 feet from the entrance of the Kent Falls Brook. And I'm not aware of any other wetlands in that area that are within, I'd say 500 feet. And it's a good 1,000 plus feet from the road. It's not visible at all from Carter Road.
So, Vinny, can I ask you a question? On the application, it says there's no plumbing of any kind.
No plumbing meaning.
You guys want to have water in there?
Yes, there'll be a water line, correct. We'll need a water because it's a greenhouse. So, we'll have to water flowers, but that's not supplying toilets or anything like that. So there's no sewer. What I meant by plumbing is no bathrooms or any type of draining accessory, not even a sink.
Okay, but
Just
you are
like-
gonna have water in there. So
Yes. And I sent Kathy Weber. I emailed her a whole bunch of stuff because there's a lot she needs to chime in here. But it's away from all of our septic, and it meets all of the setbacks for any of our septic systems or anything like that. Water would be supplied from the barn, from the horse barn, because there is water there. That might be a situation where it's a heated water line. We might not, they'd have to protect that in the winter. There's ways to do that. We have a few of those around where they're heated to keep it from freezing through the winter. But the water is simply to water the flowers. And we have some irrigation set up already in that proximity area that might work as well. Yeah, that whole area now, Google Earth hasn't updated in quite a while, but we have a lot of raised beds that we've done. We have one large plot. It's probably a few hundred feet by a few hundred feet. That's where we grow a lot of our vegetables. And then we have a whole bunch of raised beds that we did in the fall that we put plastic over, and we've quickly outgrown that. So this greenhouse will greatly just help our yield. Right now, we're supplying about say 5% of our fresh produce to our kitchen and dining. We do some farm to table meals once or twice a week, things like that. So it's been fun doing it, and we'd like to expand upon it. And we think that this greenhouse will definitely help us.
Who manages that? Who provides the labor for that? Is it your residents, Vin?
It is some of our residents. We do have like a industrial arts type of program. We also have some full-time employees as well. That we have a full-time horticulturist, and he has several under him that also manage. But yes, it is a combination of some of our labor that lives there, and also some paid labor as well.
And you said you're supplying the food service group. Are you selling any of your produce at farmers markets or bringing it off-site at all?
Not at this time, but it's something we would like to do. We really would like to, as yield increases and we get better at it, or gaining some organic certifications, we would like to market it and sell it. Yes, it is something we'd like to do. With COVID now, obviously we can't have anyone on the property, but it is something that we want to expand the program, and it's fast growing, and people really seem to enjoy it. There's a lot of interest in it. A lot of interest from the community. We have other farms that we work with as well.
So do you anticipate a future farm stand, maybe?
It's possible. At this point with COVID, obviously no, but I don't know about on our property, but as you know, we do have we are opening something downtown that we're working on right now that will be a food service venue. So there's some possibility of marketing it there as well. We did do honey. We've been doing honey for 2 years in a row, and this is a really good yield we had this year. So we were able to bottle that and kind of sell that online under our moniker.
In terms of the soil disturbance or the construction of the so I'll call it the greenhouse, but it's really a hoop house, as you say. You're going to need to level out an area and bring in subgrade and then that pea gravel that you talked about.
Yes, the area there is already leveled. It's not an area that we had cleared in the past. It was when we purchased the property, it was already cleared. And that area was utilized for our gardening, or the horses stay in the pastures that we already cleared, as you know, a few years back. So this area is fairly level. It really shouldn't require much more than simple grading and adding of something comfortable to walk on, which would be pea gravel or something like that. There's no structure that's really these are fairly easily constructed.
Well, we don't see. I mean, I know that because the creek is down on plan right, which is to the east of the property. That everything sort of flows down to there, but I can't tell how steep it is. So, do you plan on during construction? Do you plan on having any erosion controls in place?
We could, I don't think it would be necessary because we're so far away, but we can absolutely put silt fence up or hay bales if we thought we would disturb it that much. But I really did. We were planning on doing this on our own with our own, small machinery. The actual house is constructed by hand. You literally pound these posts in with a fence post driver. So we don't anticipate, major excavation aside from leveling a pad with, I would say, probably 3/4 inch stone and then something nice to walk on. I think the pea gravel is nice. I see a lot of people do maybe stone dust. Obviously, it's going to get destroyed with potting soil and it's not going to be the kind of floor you can sweep or anything.
And then I've got a question regarding you talked about the water and the power at the barn. How was that water and power run? Was that part of an earlier project where you ran it down from the street, or does it come from the existing house? How does that work?
No, it's its own service, and it was existing from the Pliams when we purchased it. So it's a 200 amp service, and they had already had a well there. It's nothing we did. It's existing.
So the service and the well were existing in the barn when you purchased the property?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. That's I don't have any other questions now to start. Are there any comments from the? Well, let me open it up to the public. I see. So you're showing up, Mrs. Altfest, as Altfest, and I'm not sure that are you, Mom? But you go ahead and speak. But you're on mute. Almost.
Got it.
There you
Okay.
are.
I had to find the right button. So thank you for recognizing me. I'm Dr. Karen Altfest. I've been on Carter Road for 23 years, and we bought our home on Carter Road because it was a beautiful residential neighborhood. And before we moved here, we checked it out with a lot of people in town who told us that High Watch was a very good neighbor. They had about 12 beds at the time. But now they have 78 beds according to their website. And while Mr. Roberti said that we have some staff, the website says that there are 90 staff members. And we know that they're in the middle of building new beds, and the construction and the trucks and the coming and going. It used to be peaceful, charming, family-oriented, and now it's busy, highly trafficked, a noisy commercial area. And I was really glad to hear Karen Casey say that some facilities belong in a bigger town, because to have High Watch now building on two sides of Carter Road is setting a precedent that's really going to be horrible for the road. I think it'll change the character of the road for sure. And I think by that, it'll change the character of the town. And as Alice rightly said, we'd love to protect the people in the town. And I don't see how this is doing it. What I would really like to know is where the residential area in Kent ends and where the commercial area in Kent begins. I used to think that that was like where the barns are or where the shopping center is, but it's come to my backyard. I hear the noise, I hear the building. I'm down the road, I'm not right next door to High Watch. I hear them. I see the trucks rumbling by 3 at a time, huge, huge, huge trucks, not a little pickup truck, gigantic trucks. And actually my husband and I turned out of our driveway the other day, as we've been doing for 23 years, and we're almost killed by a truck that was on our side of the road, because there may be sometimes, I think if you're very careful, you could have 2 cars on the road. If you're not very careful, you're in the middle of the road or on the wrong side. And it's become very, very dangerous. My kids ride their bikes on the road. It makes me very, very uncomfortable. So I'm just wondering, does such a facility belong on our road at all? And is this going to set a new precedent? Because it isn't a horse farm or whatever the town agreed on. It's a big commercial facility now coming our way. And I don't think it's a matter of whether you see it or not. They've been building there for a long time now. It looks like a big gravel pit. And now they're going to start building and tearing up the other side of the road. And that's not a horse. It sounds like a flower. Who doesn't like a flower? But I think that's just something to say. They've got big plans for this, and they're just going to keep coming and coming. I mean, they pretty much own Carter Road. A real estate agent said to me they own Carter Road, and they're just not going to stop. And I think this is a good place to draw the line. And I'd love to hear everybody else's opinions, you know, when you get to that. But I'm very, very scared. I mean, I often don't sleep at night because people come to my home, they drive in my driveway, they think we're High Watch Farm, and they rattle our doorknobs. And High Watch Farm on their website says they take people 24/7, 365. Well, yeah, they're at my front door trying the knob. I've called the police in the middle of the night because somebody was trying my door at 2 a.m. And then they asked for directions to High Watch Farm, which isn't that far and has a sign, but the people don't know that. And then I'm up all night thinking, who's trying my door at 2 a.m.? You know, so I think this is going to be a catastrophe for the town.
Thank you, Mrs. Altfest.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public have something to say? Hi, young Mrs. Altfest.
Okay, well, I mean, I was kind of shocked with the forthrightness just to start out of like Vinny Roberti, because he's basically saying this is an expansion. We don't have enough space. We need to expand, you know, and that falls under, in February, you guys removed in section 3224.8, I'll read that later, but you removed the convalescent home, so everything would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if this is High Watch, I don't understand why they're being allowed to expand, because unless this is a separate property not connected to High Watch. So I think that that's something that maybe a lawyer could answer, but this is a separate commercial enterprise, as Vinny unwisely admitted, like just now. I mean, it's astounding to me. He's gonna have a farm stand if he likes, maybe, maybe not. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, I mean, I'm beyond, my heart is racing. Like, I'm beyond frustrated with this. But I'll try to calm down. So, so how many people are gonna be coming and going to that farm stand? How many more, like, and then how many trucks are gonna be coming and going to bring the stuff back and forth to High Watch and then back to the town? And they're gonna have a whole operation. I mean, they have 200 people that they need to feed just at High Watch. This is not a small thing. And it's a different way of making money. I mean, I know in like, it's nice to have a greenhouse, and we're all for that. We love farms, and I love farms. I love, you know, Cobble Hill Farm. This is not, we do not need, this is a separate business that he's opening on our road. We do not need an additional business in a residential area. You know, I just can't, it can't be clearer to me that, and then the more, there are going to be more employees. I mean, they already have like a few horticulturalists and several employees. And then how many more employees is this going to be? And this is a huge greenhouse. This is not like in my backyard, I grow a couple heads of broccoli. And just because it's a temporary kind of structure that they can move wherever they want, but with your permission, doesn't mean it's not a structure that they're putting up. They need this approval. So this totally shocks me that what this man is saying. But anyway, I just think that, I mean, you probably are familiar with this. On February 13th, 2020, section 3224.8A and B regarding privately operated hospital, clinic, nursing home, or convalescent home was removed. It is my understanding that this removal was meant to prevent future expansion of facilities like High Watch. Since this is the case, and I feel like should this application be considered by the Kent Planning and Zoning Commission or go straight to the Zoning Board of Appeals? You know, because future expansion was supposed to represent some sort of hardship. They were supposed to, like, a place like High Watch is supposed to go to the appeals board with like a hardship, like we can't feed our our residents enough fresh vegetables that we grow is our hardship, you know? So that to me is, I was surprised to see this at all. And then does this, and if it's not part of this, if it's not part of this thing that Highwatch has, this, you know, this, that Highwatch is legally non-conforming status, then why approve? Because we don't need a separate business on our road. You know, if it is part of the legally non-conforming status, then to go to the appeals, you know, the zoning appeals. But if it isn't, then there's just no reason to have a new business in a residential rural area, because that's what this is. I mean, I can't even believe it. They're already producing all this stuff that they're selling, and they're feeding their 200 people that they have, including staff. So anyway, let's see what else I have here. And also the horse farm, to my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, was approved under the idea of a therapeutic activity. So are we supposed to accept that like a 2,400 square foot greenhouse is part of like some sort of therapeutic activity? No, it's a business, a commercial business opening on our road. You know, it's not, I mean, that horse farm, which was like, that was clear cut without a permit, which still bothers me. You know, yeah, you can go pet horses and that's therapeutic. This is completely unrelated to what they initially applied for. A horse farm and a farm that grows food are not the same thing. So I don't think this should be approved based on that. Like it's, you know, they could be growing food there, but that's not the approved usage of a horse farm. And so I don't know. I mean, if there's so many questions about a horse farm, like if it is, I don't know if it is separate or if it isn't. I'd like that answered from Highwatch, you know. And to me, it's just an expansion of Highwatch, which isn't permitted. So I just think that approving this greenhouse would create more construction, and we are suffering. I cannot with this construction. I hear it when I'm painting. It's horrible. And it's just chipping away at the quality of life on our road. I mean, yes, it's also, I mean, people can't sell their houses on the road, and it's driving down property values. From my perspective, it's just chipping away at the quality of life. I think that a 2,400 square foot building feeding 200 people plus potential visitors and sending it to farmers market would require an independent traffic study, because there are going to be more employees, there are going to be visitors, there are going to be just going back and forth between that space and Highwatch and deliveries. Like I mean, because it's like a hoop with plastic doesn't mean that it's not going to create all these other, a cascading effect of other things that we're already suffering from, suffering with. And I just think that to approve this proposed greenhouse prolongs construction, puts more traffic on our road, more workers, and it further depresses property values. And this endless expansion by Highwatch is not in our interest. This is exactly what John Johnson said when he said, "Is this a Trojan horse?" This is, you know, this horse farm, which never made much sense, is just their next grounds for expansion. And if you approve this unrelated to horses business, then, you know, the sky's the limit for these people with putting, like, they're putting new things in all the time. So I just think that this is not in our interest as residents. And now is the time to put an end to this expansion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. Yes, thank you for, yeah, that's great. Is there anybody else from the public that has or something to say or would like to say something or comment? Then I will ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
This
Could
is
you
Rob
identify yourself?
Carlton.
I'll turn off my I'm putting myself on mute.
Okay, Rob.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say very quickly that I think it's past time to stop feeding the High Watch beast. Everything they do is nice in its own way, but it's incrementally. We know here we are again, and it's another thing and another thing. And as I drive by, well, at least once or twice a day, I see all this construction. I'm driving through this, dirt and dust, and seeing these, 2-story high piles of gravel. I'm thinking, what was High Watch, in the beginning? I didn't, it was this like spiritual resort, and I'm thinking, getaway place, and it's like, is this what this woman had in mind with this farm? It's just dump trucks and construction, just all the time. And so anyway, I can't find a lot of literature on that, but I did check out this New York Times article about the first major renovation at High Watch. So it was the Times article from 1990, and the organization's the nonprofit organization's board governor, Edward Clark, said that it's very out of character for them to do any construction or renovation because the traditional High Watch philosophy is to do with what you have. And at that point, they were just renovating buildings because they were not being safe anymore. And so I think here's 30 years later, it is just this omnivorous beast that just won't stop. It just won't quit. And I think it's time to pass time. I would just request that, that be taken seriously. Just stop the approvals for these more and more yields. Now we're calling it yields. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I see you raising your hand listed as Andrew. Would you unmute and identify yourself, and we'll take your comment.
The name is a long story. It's not Andrew, it's Lou Alfest.
Hi, Lou.
Hi. I just wanted to say a couple of things. The first is, when you think about how many people are in Kent, I don't know, what did I see, 2,000? And you were talking about 200 people here. That's 10% of Kent. How much, close your eyes and visualize what it means for Carter Road. So just understand what's going on here. And the second thing is there are rumors that High Watch has been in the process of buying something, another home or two that are on the market. I have no idea whether that's correct or not, but should they be allowed to buy more property? What are they using it for? What would they, so I would like to hear, I'd like to see your board there stop the expansion of purchases of property. Yeah, I think I've been told that you already have established a limit to what they can do, whether it's on across the street or it's all High Watch. Let them, they got plenty there. When we came here, High Watch was a good neighbor. Now, look what's happening. It's time, as has been stated, for them to stop what they're doing. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. One other thing. Thank you for your consideration on the last property, which resulted in our elimination of one of our difficulties, so that you showed what looked like something to be curtains for little people like us versus massive, now in High Watch, massive operation that we were able to, through your own considerations, be able to stop one form of business progress on the road. So thank you for that.
Okay. Yes. Ms. Alfest?
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot one thing. There were 3 neighbors, and 2 of them submitted letters, but they submitted them today, and they didn't know about the 24-hour rule. And I wondered if it would be prudent. They sent them to me. I wondered if I would be able to read them into the record or not.
It would be preferable for you to send those to Donna and get them on the record for our next meeting within the public hearing.
Okay, yeah, because there were 3. I just want to say there were 3 other people who couldn't be here, who 2 of them submitted letters. Actually, there are 4, and 2 who are also vocally opposed to the. So I'll have that. But I just wanted to make that point.
We'll be happy to we'll be happy to review those documents if and when we continue the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just so that you know, I did receive those 2 letters, and I responded back to both of the people and told them that based on the new executive orders, we can't accept anything that is received within 24 hours of the hearing. And what I had told them was that I would ask that the commission please leave the public hearing open for at least until October, so that those letters could be read into the record, so that everybody that has concerns would have their concerns addressed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, my comment to that is that, this commission is happy to hear any public comment within a reasonable period of time. We make a tremendous effort to review and to plan for these meetings, and it would be really helpful in general for the information to come to us in time to review and not be asked to spend more time on something than we should. That being said, we're happy to review whatever public comment there is, but I wish that people would, I would hope that people respect our time.
Yeah.
May I respond?
Yes, Vinny, I'll give you an opportunity in just a minute. I want to run through the commissioner first, if you wouldn't mind keeping your notes and then responding after.
No problem.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the commission?
I think that Ellen did bring up a good point about whether or not they should be going to ZBA. I don't know if, because it's on a different piece of property, that it would be something that you would hear, or if because it's not a convalescent use. So, I mean, it definitely is a good point, which I'm not sure.
So for me, Donna, the question is, what's the use at 47? And I know that we struggled with approving an accessory use.
Right, and that's what it is.
A property to an activity or to a use on a separate property, and where the primary use of that property was not established. So the only use on that property that is established is an accessory use to the convalescent facility, right?
That is how I remember it.
So I think the tricky thing is here is that farming is allowed in the rural zone. It can be an accessory use, it can be a primary use. And if we establish that the farm is the primary use and the accessory use is the convalescent is the convalescent use of the horse farm, then it's would be permissible by right. And the only reason that they're coming to us is because Highwatch as an organization somewhat conglomerated all that land into one, but I'm not sure that carries the day. So first, that's something that for me personally, that's the question.
Right.
Is what's the use? And we're going to need Mike Ziska to weigh in on, just take a look at our records for that parcel and tell us that it's an accessory to Highwatch, and if it's an accessory to Highwatch, then I think it does go to ZBA. But if it's not an accessory to Highwatch, then I think that Vin should be submitting under a different name and not coming to us because it's permitted by right.
Yeah, but you still have to get a permit for the structure. Even though you have a use that's approved by right, which is the agriculture, anything that you put on there still requires a permit.
Sure.
So he's asking for a zoning permit. It wouldn't be a special permit at that point in time. It would just be an administrative permit, but they would still be required to pull some kind of a zoning permit in order to construct the hoop house.
Of course, on a building permit too, right?
Oh, absolutely, a building permit.
Yeah. So I think that's the question that we as a commission have to answer. And I think that Ellen's comment is right, that it's a pre-existing non-conforming. But it's this pre-exists, that use on Highwatch's property pre-exists our zoning regulations from the very beginning. And since we made the change, as Ellen rightly pointed out, where the convalescent home is not permitted at all because it's not mentioned, because we took it out, then it would have to go to ZBA, because we would say it's non-conforming and we have to say that you cannot increase a non-conforming use.
Right.
So for me, that's the question.
Right.
Anybody else? Adam, does that make any sense to you, or Alice or Karen, Mark?
I think I'd like to hear from Mike. I agree with you. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that we should have much of a discussion right now, because if it's going to go to ZBA, then it's a waste of our time. I think we should hear from Mike. I remember the discussion about when they bought this property and what they were going to do with it. And went back and forth on whether it was a separate property, whether it was covered underneath the use of the main property, or it wasn't. But I just don't remember what the end decisions were on that. So to consider that, I need to know that. And I think we have some questions for Mike.
Okay. So I would like to, though, I hear what you're saying, Adam. I would like to give Vinny the opportunity to respond to some of the comments simply because he asked. So Vin, with that, I'll open the floor to you.
Sure. The 47 Carter Road is a separate property from Highwatch. It was not part of that where we combined 50. If you remember, we combined 62 and 54. This is not part of that deal. This 47 is a separate. If you went to the tax assessor's office and pulled the land records, 47 Carter Road is a separate property. It is used as an accessory to therapeutic use, and it is a farm. It's a farm. I know people don't like to say it's a farm. It's a farm. It's a horse. We have horses. We have a lot agricultural activity. We do have our ropes course. We're not proposing a commercial farming operation. This is low impact organic farming that we've become good at. You know, each year that this is open, we get a little better at it, and we higher yields and better products. It's fun. It's therapeutic for our guest population and some of our extended guest population, and a lot of our staff are involved in it as well. We have a lot of volunteerism. Before COVID, we did. It's a farm. It's not going to become a cattle ranch. It's like you would see in many other places. South Kent School, for example, they have that beautiful facility there on South Kent Road. Very similar. We're experimenting a lot. We're doing different things. We found that a greenhouse would really help us out and really extend our growing season and allow us to do some more and grow some other products. This is not a Trojan horse. It's a farm. We want a greenhouse, to extend our growing season and experiment a little with farming. Our horse program, we have 5 horses right now. 2 are on loan. Actually, 1 is on loan, so we have 4 technically. Our equestrian equine therapy is very popular. All of the things that we laid out we were going to do several years ago, we are doing, albeit in smaller numbers because of COVID, but the outdoor activities are great during COVID as well. So we're doing all those things. I'm not, the farm stand, I probably shouldn't even have said something. No one's mentioned that. I could see that as a use. We're not planning it. So I don't want that on the record that we're planning a farm stand. That was, that's not true. And there's not a lot of trucks going in and out of there. I don't see a lot of vehicle traffic. It's typically the 3 or 4 people that work there during the day go in at 7 and leave at 4. Not a lot of deliveries. All of our mulch and manure stays on the farm. Hay deliveries twice a year. I mean, that's it. It's like any other small agricultural venture here in town. It's not very high impact at all.
Okay, thank you, Vin. I will say that I know that construction is loud and it's messy and it's dusty and it's hard to live with. And I understand how the neighbors feel about that construction. And I would say if I was in an open venue, and I will say that if he had gotten through the construction and quieted down a little bit, that's people might not be as aggravated. But that's just a personal comment. It's loud and it's messy, and I understand the frustration with people who are trying to live in a construction zone. I mean, I do it all the time, and I know you do it all the time, Vin, but everybody else doesn't.
No, I agree, but this particular application this is not a loud or noisy venture. I understand this is a separate property and a separate project. It's a pretty straightforward, project. It's a greenhouse, and we're not claiming hardship. I'm not saying that we desperately need a greenhouse. This is a hardship. This is something that is needed in the pursuit of the program we're doing. And I'm not saying that, we're claiming hardship and we need a greenhouse. That Highwatch isn't going to survive without a greenhouse. This is something fun that we'd like to do. We really like to get into fall here and put up a greenhouse and come out of the box early in the spring and have lots of vegetables.
So are you saying that running the greenhouse is going to be part of a therapeutic program that is going to be associated with the campus across the street?
It could be. I mean, we do have residents from across the street come to 47 to do equine therapy. We always have, just like we laid out before. We do. I don't know if they do anything with the gardening as of yet, but they might. But the folks that work at 47 are specifically there to work on the farm. And that's what they do. They produce vegetables and take care of the horses. They're all paid employees.
But wasn't, when you came forward with the horse farm, wasn't that the determination that was made? Was that the horses were going to be part of a therapeutic program because you were participating in that therapeutic program in Sharon, and that you wanted to bring that program into Kent? And there was a question about how that was going to work. And I believe that the tie-in was that that program would be accessory to the one across the street. And I think that was the tie-in. Okay. So my question still is the growing of vegetables for use on the campus going to be part of the therapeutic program of the campus across the street? As I think that's one of the things that Mike is going to ask me. So I think that's going to be an integral part of the information that I need to send him.
Okay. Whether you consider growing vegetables therapy, I don't know, but it's part of Highwatch. It's something that we do. The exact wording of it, I don't know, but it's similar. Just like if that's what they said for the equine program, it would be very similar.
I have a question. May I speak now, Matt?
Sure, Karen, go ahead.
I mean, I understand how the neighbors feel. My heart goes out to them having to live in that particular environment with all the construction and et cetera. But in my mind, this seems to me like this is just really part of Highwatch's ability to provide food service. And do we have to get into classifying it as therapy? Can't they just have a big garden and a greenhouse? I mean, they're putting up huge buildings and roads and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know why we're making this so complicated. I think maybe allowing them to have the right to grow vegetables for their facility shouldn't be so complicated. And maybe the way for us to handle it is to restrict the traffic on their little road to the greenhouse. But I don't see it as a commercial venture. I just sort of see it as exactly what he's describing, Vince is describing, sort of food to table. And, if someday they come back and say, hey, we want to have a farm stand, then we would take it from that point forward.
I think though, Karen, that if we allow this as a farming operation, which our regulations are built around being very farmer and farming friendly, that we encourage farms, we encourage farm stands, and we have a right to farm ordinance. And if we make that determination that we're approving it as a farm, as a farming operation, then they would be allowed to put a farm stand on by right. So they wouldn't come back to us for a farm stand, and the neighbors would consider that, I think, further creep.
I see.
And I think that. So just to clarify, I think that what Donna was trying to get at was that if this is going to be an accessory to the use, and the use is not permitted, then that would be, I think that Mike is going to determine that has to go to ZBA. But if this is not an accessory to the use, and it's the primary use of that particular property, then it becomes permitted by right. Donna, is that about right? Do I have that?
Yeah, but I go back to the example that Vinny used is the South Kent School. When they came to us to develop the old Arno farm on South Kent Road, the determination was made that that is first and foremost an educational facility, and that farm was accessory to the education that's provided at the South Kent School, which changes the things that are allowed by right. And it also changes the way that we look at things from an inland wetlands perspective, because there are inland wetlands on that property. So we had to make sure that the designation of that property was done correctly, so that we knew how to issue all of the permits that property would need to have approval from in order to operate. And the determination was made, first and foremost, an educational facility, secondly, a farm. And I think that is what they determined when we allowed when the whole cutting of the trees and the horses were put in, that horse program on that property was not making it a standalone farm, but an accessory use to the campus across the street, just like the South Kent Farm was an accessory use to the educational primary use of the South Kent School.
Okay, so it sounds like you know exactly what the salient points are to discuss with Attorney Ziska.
Yeah.
That would educate our path forward.
Yeah, that will determine how we need to proceed.
Fine. Are there any other questions that we would ask Highwatch to answer between now and our October meeting?
Well, I guess that one question is that I had asked Vinny that I would like to know before I send anything to Mike, and maybe he can find out tomorrow, is whether or not that greenhouse is going to be used as part of a therapeutic program for the residents across the street. Because that's what's going to drive Mike's answer. If they say, no, we are strictly doing this in order to supplement fresh vegetables at 62 and to possibly provide vegetables and produce that they're growing in their new venture, then it becomes a commercial operation at that point in time. And we have to figure out how all of that plays into any decision that's made.
Yeah, I think the overarching question that is the one that you asked earlier. But so that's out. Vinny, if you could answer that question for Donna in some fashion over the next couple of days, so that she can incorporate that into her discussions with the attorney, that would be great.
Yeah, I've made a note of that, and I will discuss that with the people that run the program. But I mean, my answer now is no. Guests are not involved in greenhouse construction and the vegetable growing. Those are paid staff positions, so I can answer that for you now. They do the horse therapy. I mean, they both take place on the farm, but to get you the proper answer and the proper legal answer, I will get that for you.
Okay, thank you, Vinny.
Well, it's very clear. Vinny has now said it twice. This has nothing to do with the clients of Highwatch. He has said it twice to us tonight.
Yep.
I heard it, but I still would like confirmation.
Well, let's just see if it's the same confirmation.
I mean, they eat the vegetables.
And I'd like to see what it is before you take it to mine.
But yeah, I understand that. I'm sorry, Mark, you go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, it's just not clear to me. I mean, they're currently growing stuff at that location in raised beds. So are we saying they're not allowed to do that either because that's not part of the therapeutic program? Well, what difference does it make if they have a greenhouse above those beds, or just grow in the beds, which they're already doing?
Because the hoop house requires a permit.
A permit.
So it's not necessarily the raised beds. It's what we're trying to figure out is whether or not the construction of the hoop house, greenhouse, needs a variance, a special permit, or if it's as of right. But in order to determine that, I need to determine what's going to happen inside there. So if he's telling me now, if he's saying that those raised beds are not being tended to by clients at 62, and that's going to continue on, then I could let Mike know that, so that he has all the information he needs in order to make a determination.
And I think, like Alice said, Vinny's answered that question, that it's not being used by the residents. But Vinny's going to let us know if he's going to talk to his folks, and he's going to let us know if that changes over the next day or so. And then you're going to talk to Mike about the actual designation of the property and the use of that property, whether it's accessory or whether it should be considered standalone. Adam?
I'm just gonna wait to see what Mike has to say. I don't think I have any other comments.
Okay. Then I would suggest a motion to continue the public hearing to our next regular meeting, which is the second Thursday in October.
I make that motion.
A second.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Adam. Then with no further discussion, I will call the vote. Those in favor of continuing the public hearing, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, that's Karen. That's all 5 of us. Okay, so motion carries. Thank you to the residents of Carter Road who have spoken tonight. Vinny, thank you for making a presentation, and I'm going to move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
Okay. So, discussion and possible decision. This is 6B1. The reappointment of Ellen Corsell, Frank Way, and Peter Hanby. Their terms as members of the Architecture Review Board expiring August 2nd, 2022. I have a question, Donna. They all 3 of them have the same term, the same expiration date? You're on mute. Mute.
Sorry. You have 3 and 2. So 2 go out at the same time and 3 go out at the same time.
Okay.
That was the way when the Architecture Review Board was first set up, that was how their terms were determined. That's the way that they fluctuate back and forth. And the terms expired in August, and we've not met in, I can't tell you how long. And I just happened to look at my calendar and at my listing, and I was like, oh God, I missed it. So they have decided that yes, they would love to re-up.
Sign them up.
Thank you.
So I would look for a motion to reappoint Alan, Frank, and Peter to the ARB with terms expiring August 2nd, 2022.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, that's Adam and Mark. Thank you both. And all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. And let the record show that that Daryl joined back in after the closing or the continuing of the public hearing, previous public hearing. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6B2, which is the modification to permit number 81-18C, Mark G. Smith, PE for MKN Property Holdings, LLC, 5 South Main Street, map 19, block 12, lot 5. Addition, new pumps and tanks with the modification to include the installation of 2 1,000-gallon propane tanks and 1 48-kilowatt generator.
Right. I guess they realized when we had this big power outage that they really do need a generator. And yeah, so back in 2019, I had given them approval to go ahead and put in 2 propane tanks. I do not believe that those propane tanks were ever put in. So now instead of those 2, what they're doing is they're modifying the site plan to show that they're going to be putting in 2 1,000-gallon propane tanks closer to the Swift House side of the property, which is the east side, and then a generator where the original 2 smaller propane tanks were going to be placed. And they'll have chain link fences around both of those. So Mr. Gleason is here to answer any questions that anybody might have with regard to the placement and how things are going to be added and where lines are going to be run.
John, I apologize for, I thought that you were just interested in what we were talking about. I would have suggested that
That's
we.
a good one. So Mohammed of MKN Properties had contacted me, and he's interested in purchasing a backup generator that would power everything that's existing on site. The building has a 400 amp structure service right now, the single phase, and it's more power than what they really need for the property. So what I'm proposing is that the actual load on the property is 130 amps basically. So a 48 kW generator produces about 200 amps of power. So we are trying to minimize any noise that would be produced by the generator by reducing the items that would be on the generator during a power outage. Everything existing would be running, but if they were to ever add any additional electric loads, I don't know if they are permitted to put a deli in there or whatever it might be, it would not be able to go on the generator. The generator is going to be installed directly, or proposing on the east side of on the structure, on the grass section on the plan. There are 2 existing 100-gallon tanks that are tight to the structure on the east side now. They provide fuel for the heating system in the structure. We propose to do away with those and to connect them to the 2 1,000-gallon tanks, which we'll put on the east side of that driveway toward the Swift House property. The 2 1,000-gallon tanks require approximately 11 by 18 fenced-in area, or flat surface. Mohammed has said that he wanted to put in a chain link fence or some type of fence that the commission would approve around the generator for safety, and as well around the propane tanks. There's a little chain fence area around the air compressor on the east side of the property now, so that's what I assume you may want, but maybe you'd like to see something else there. The generator is a QS series. It stands for Quiet Source Series. It has a sound attenuated enclosure now. It produces about 60 dB at 23 feet from the front of the generator now. That being said, it's about the sound of talking. You're talking at a normal level would be roughly 50 to 60, depending on who it is, obviously. The Swift House doesn't have a generator, but certainly Templeton Farms has a generator now. As far as the neighbors having a large generator. So the sound from that obviously is heard. That's an older generator, is what I want to say, and it produces a higher level of noise. And I do not know what it is, what it does produce for dBs, but it definitely is louder than what we're proposing. We decided to try and we're proposing 2 1,000-gallon tanks just because it's cheaper than 1 2,000-gallon tank, which gives them a minimum of 7 days of load, at full load usage. At 50% load, this uses 4 gallons an hour. But Taylor Fuel wasn't so sure, if depending on the situation of how soon they could get to Kent, or if there was something that prevented them down the trees across the road. So that's why we're doing a 2,000-gallon total storage. That would be as much as I can say about that right now. We do need to dig some trenches. We need to install a conduit on the structure to get power from the generator to the structure, but we need to dig a trench from the generator across the driveway to the tanks. I was going to reach out to Joe Manley and see if we can drive a conduit under the driveway so we didn't have to dig across the blacktop, but that would be his call as to whether or not he would permit that. In the past, it has been permitted. We literally shove a pipe, a galvanized pipe under the driveway, and then we would sleeve it. That would be a sleeve for the propane lines.
John, I see that the propane tanks are straddling the setback. And I wonder if, I'm assuming these propane tanks are above ground.
They are. So is the setback 15 feet on that, or did I draw them?
I am assuming that this dashed line is the setback line from the property. Donna, is that correct? Yeah. So yeah, you've drawn it one on the inside and one within the setback. So one solution could be that they run parallel. It shouldn't increase the fence size, the fence dimension much.
Right. Certainly, we can put them end to end, going north to south. Basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
then I also wonder, John, is the generator close enough to the building to create an echo, which would, in essence, push all of the sound in one direction as opposed to dispersing it in all sides? I don't know much about sound travel or sound waves, but it seems to me there might be an echo next to the building. And would you consider, because you have to drive a conduit underneath anyway, does it make sense to put the generator on the far side near the propane tanks and then just run the electrical feed underground?
We thought of that. Kevin Taylor of Taylor Fuel said that he wants the generator 25 feet away from the tanks in case if it is running when he's refueling. And he guessed that could be a code, or whether that's the a SOP of Taylor Oil. I'm not sure. So he did say he wanted them 25 feet away for refueling. So the point of that is that the noise of the generator would come out of the exhaust side of the generator. So that's going to be going parallel with Route 7, north and south. So anything that would be, as far as noise-wise on that, would be, I would think that the commission would want that heading south, the noisy end of the generator, the exhaust end. If that makes
So
sense.
it's your opinion, John, that what you're saying is that the noisy side of the generator is not going to be facing the building, and it won't be any echo, and that's not something that I should be worried about.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Well, I think, I think it will only enhance the services and as we saw last month. They tweets, we couldn't get gas, we couldn't get ice cream.
Yeah.
You could get ice
Yeah,
cream because he was giving it away.
He had a tremendous loss of product, and I guess he's doing this to several of the stores since this last storm.
Is there any way that the chain link fence could have that green plastic woven through it?
Woven through it, or I'm not so sure. Do you want the green fence that's metal, or is it another product that you mean? I'm not familiar with.
They have that chain link fence, and then they've got like that plastic weave that goes through the chain link. That's what they're putting up at Birch Hill. It at least would make it look a little bit better than seeing a chain link fence with two big propane tanks on the inside.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I agree. Some screening within that chain link.
Yes.
Okay.
And you want the same around the generator as well? The same type of fence, correct? It would
Yeah.
just be, yeah.
Alice, do you have any comments? Or, sorry, so you're just getting up.
No, I'm having to move around to stay awake. No, actually, no, I don't. It sounds very reasonable and professional.
Mark?
No, it's all good. I mean, it's not a gas station to begin with, so it's fine.
Okay, Adam?
I have no comments. It seems like a generator installation.
Right.
Karen?
I had no problem. Donna tackled my issue, which was the chain link fence.
And Daryl? Great. All right, so then I would look for a motion to approve this application, provided that the propane tanks are placed end to end or in some configuration that they're on the inside of the setback. And that the fencing has some screening as described by Donna.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great, thanks, Mark, thanks, Adam. And there being no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Thanks for being so patient, John. Again, I apologize for not realizing that that you were sitting there not enjoying the conversation.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a good night.
Okay. All right. So agenda item 8A. This is the subdivision regulation subcommittee, which we discussed earlier. I'll move on to agenda item number 9A, which is administrative permits and certificates of compliance. Did not look at that, but I'll look at it now. I have no comments.
Matt, excuse
Yes,
me,
Yes, Alice.
the subdivision discussion,
Yes?
did I sleep through that?
In the beginning of the agenda, Alice.
What?
Where
Sorry.
did we talk about? This was agenda item 5B1, planning schedule for the rewrite of the subdivision regulations, where we had talked about
Oh, yeah, okay.
keeping that as
yeah.
standing. So
Okay.
no, you weren't sleeping, you just forgot. It was a long time ago already.
Same difference.
And okay, so I have no comments regarding the administrative permits. 9B, agenda item number 9B, the siting council, they finally let me testify after sitting there. I sat 3 hours the first time. I sat for an hour the second time before they told us that we didn't have to be there. And then the third time I sat for 2.5 hours before they decided to ask me some questions. I answered their questions, and I could have, sent Nathan to do it. Because we had the letter that we wrote as a commission, and Donna had identified the sections for me for each of the items which made up our objections to both sites, and they asked me to go through that, and they asked me some dumb questions about how I thought the cell service was in town. And then they made a snarky comment that I didn't have a lot of bandwidth, and they were wondering whether I was working on my cell system, on my cellular phone at home, and maybe I needed a new cell tower. So I was happy to do it, but I'm happy that it's over.
Connie thought you did a very good job.
So, and how is Connie?
She's good.
Good. She still has to testify?
She does. They want her to testify whenever the next time is.
Okay. All right, good. And then the agenda item number 9, does anybody have any other questions about the siting council?
Do you want me to keep this on the agenda or take it off since you have testified?
I think it can come off. I don't think we need to chase it. I mean, it would be nice to know, Donna, if you hear anything, to just give us something in your administrative report. But we don't have to talk about it every month. And then 9C, the 2019 annual monitoring report. I had asked that this stay on the agenda so that I had a chance to review the report. And I didn't read the whole 119 pages, but I did read the 14-page summary, and it looks reasonable. Most of the levels of the pollutant and the organic materials that they were tracking were generally showed up as pre-development levels, except for the sodium, which they were picking up higher levels of sodium during the winter months, and everybody attributes that to the road salt, because it only occurred in the areas near the road, and as you got further into the property, it was much diminished. So they call that the final report, but they are still going to continue their testing. They're just not going to report to us. I think that's the way I understand it. And that
there are a couple of areas that are actually on the golf course that they have to continue to test in order to keep their Autobahn license. So that's what they're referring to. And then they're not going to report those test results to us. And then the ones that we had asked them to test the wells around, they'll report to us when they do it.
correct. And we gave them 5 years from 2017. So I think it's 21, right? That they do it again. Okay.
Yeah.
That concludes our business.
Yay.
So again, I think that we are, I think that we are deliberative, not overly so, but some would say that we beat things almost to death. But I'm glad we do. I think we're a good commission, and I think we evaluate the issues and give them their proper weight. So thank you all for your participation, and I would look for a motion to adjourn. All right, that's Adam. Thumbs up. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.